Hello everyone, I am very glad that you're joining this story. Subscribe, like and comment. Enjoy the story, smile more often.
There's a moment in every wedding when the bride feels the world stop spinning for a second, not because of love, or the dress, or the vows, but because something happens that wasn't part of the plan. I spent 16 damn months planning this day down to the last folded napkin. The playlist was custom made. The seating chart redrawn 5 separate times. Every guest invited had a purpose. And not a single seat, not one, was meant for Claire. It was a warm spring afternoon in upstate New York, that kind of lazy golden sunshine that makes the barnwood glow and turns even the most jaded family member into someone who pretends to be happy for a few hours. I wore my grandmother's lace veil, something old. My niece tucked a little blue ribbon into my bouquet. Something borrowed. Everything was where it should have been. Until I turned from the bar to laugh at a joke my best friend Megan told me, and I saw her, standing near the back, half in shadow, sipping a glass of white wine like she owned the air around her. Claire. The name still feels like a bruise when I say it out loud. There she was, in a champagne satin dress that screamed "look at me," like she was the bride instead of the unwanted ghost of my past. Her hair was curled in those fake perfect waves. Her smirk? That was real. Real as hell. I hadn't seen her in 6 years, and yet it took half a second to feel like I was 27 again, destroyed, gutted, humiliated. My breath caught. I blinked like I was trying to fix the image in front of me. Maybe it was a hallucination. Maybe I'd drunk too much Moscato during bridal prep. But no, she tilted her glass toward me in a mock toast and winked. Claire had the nerve to wink at me on my goddamn wedding day. I turned to Megan and whispered through my teeth, "She's here. She's actually here." Megan followed my gaze, her expression collapsing into horror. "What the hell is she doing here?" she hissed, already grabbing my arm like she was ready to throw hands. "I don't know," I muttered. But deep down I did. There were only 2 people who would dare invite my sister to my wedding behind my back, and they were both seated at table 2 next to the lemon cake. My parents. Of course. I knew it before I asked. The rest of the day blurred into anger-glazed moments. I tried to smile for pictures. I tried to dance with Daniel, my soon-to-be husband, whose face kept searching mine for answers I didn't have the strength to give. I tried to pretend Claire didn't exist in that room, but she moved through it like a blade, slicing conversations, slipping between guests like she belonged, smiling that too sweet smile that had fooled people for years. Flashback time. Because you need to understand, I didn't just cut off Claire over a petty fight or a stupid family feud. No. Claire slept with my fiancé. Let me say that again, just so it settles in. Claire, my only sister, seduced Brian, my partner of 4 years, and I walked in on them in my apartment. My apartment. On my damn couch. She didn't even have the decency to look surprised. I still remember what she said when she saw me in the doorway, holding takeout in one hand and my heart in the other. "Well, guess you came home early." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I dropped the bag of Thai food and walked out without a word. The next day, she texted me, "Don't be so dramatic." He was already checked out. I blocked her, deleted his number, packed a suitcase, and moved out of the city 2 weeks later. Started therapy. Learned how to sleep again without shaking. And now she was here. With no warning. Like it was normal. I slipped away from the reception and climbed the narrow wooden staircase to the bridal suite, my heart jackhammering against my ribs like it was trying to break out. My dress swished with every step, the heels clicking like gunfire. My mom was there, fixing her lipstick in the mirror like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just set fire to the only boundaries I'd ever drawn. I closed the door hard behind me. She turned, startled, but only slightly. She knew what this was about. Of course she did. "She's here," I said, my voice a blade. She blinked, calm. "I know. You invited her?" My voice cracked not from weakness, but fury. "She's your sister," Mom said, as if that was an answer to anything. "She ruined my life. I told you I didn't want her here." Mom stepped toward me, slow and gentle, like she was talking to a cornered animal. "You're getting married, Emily. It's a fresh start. It's time to forgive. You'll thank me later. I stared at her, my mouth open, words failing to come fast enough. In that moment, I realized something that stunned me more than Claire's presence ever could. My mom wasn't trying to make peace. She was trying to erase the past, to force me into pretending like none of it ever happened. Because to her, family shame is worse than betrayal. And appearances? Well, those mattered more than truth. I stood there, heart pounding, breath shallow, knowing two things for sure. First, this day was no longer mine. And second, Claire hadn't shown up just to smile politely and disappear. She had something planned. Something cruel. And God help me, I was going to be ready. People always assume betrayal happens in a single moment. A slam of the door, a caught glance, a text you weren't supposed to see. But that's not how it worked with Claire. The real betrayal was slower, more deliberate, like water dripping into a crack until it splits concrete in half. We weren't just sisters, we were best friends once. The kind of girls who shared clothes, whispered secrets into the dark, and swore we'd stand by each other through everything. We had matching bracelets when we were kids. Hers said, always, mine said, forever. The irony isn't lost on me now. Back then, 6 years ago, no, wait, almost 10 years ago now, or maybe longer. God, it's hard to keep track. I thought I had everything figured out. I had just gotten the promotion at work, I was living in that little walk-up in Brooklyn with the sun-soaked kitchen, and I was engaged to Brian. Brian, with his quiet voice and sleepy eyes, who left notes in my lunch and said he wanted 3 kids and a dog named Wednesday. He wasn't perfect, but he was mine. I believed that. I wore the ring. I called him my future. And then came that Thursday. It wasn't a dramatic evening, nothing screamed betrayal in the air. I came home early from a work trip, my boss had caught the flu, and we canceled the final meeting. I was excited, arms full of Thai takeout, ready to surprise him. The lights were off in the apartment, but his jacket was on the hook, his shoes by the door. I walked into the living room and stopped cold. Claire was on my couch, her legs draped over Brian's lap like she lived there, laughing at something he had said. She was wearing my college hoodie, the one I thought I lost, and holding a glass of wine in the hand that wasn't casually resting on his thigh. He froze when he saw me. She didn't. She actually smirked, like she was proud of it, like this was the punchline to some joke I didn't know I'd been the setup for. Guess you came home early, she said, not even pretending to be caught. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even cry. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, 30 of the longest seconds of my life. Then I turned around, walked straight back out the door, and went to Megan's place. Didn't look back, didn't answer the phone when Brian called an hour later, didn't read the messages Claire sent me that night. I blocked them both the next morning, and then I called my mom. She cried. That part's important. She cried when I told her what Claire had done. Said it couldn't be true, that I had to be mistaken, that maybe I misunderstood. When I said no, I saw them, she begged me to talk to Claire, to hear her side. Like there was a side to screwing your sister's fiancé on her couch. My dad was worse. He said, maybe you shouldn't have left them alone so much. You work a lot. That's when I hung up and didn't call back for 3 weeks. They both showed up unannounced later that month, standing outside Megan's place with red-rimmed eyes and a bottle of wine, like we were about to pretend this was all just one of those family mistakes you sweep under a rug with a fake apology and a group hug. I told them I needed space, maybe forever. My mom said, but she's your sister. My dad said, you don't just cut up family. And I said, watch me. I moved 2 states away. Got into therapy. Focused on work. The nights were hard. Grief isn't just about death. Sometimes it's about the people who stay alive, but kill parts of you anyway. Slowly, I built a life. That's how I met Daniel, not through some rom-com moment, but at the DMV of all places. He offered me a mint while we waited in line, and somehow we ended up getting coffee afterward. With Daniel, there were no secrets. No games. No knives disguised as hugs. Just calm. I didn't tell him everything about Claire, not at first, just enough to explain why I didn't talk to my family much, why I flinched when people said the word sister. He never pushed. Fast forward to the wedding. Claire was mingling like nothing ever happened, laughing with the DJ, chatting up Daniel's cousin, complimenting the flowers like she wasn't the reason I almost gave up on love entirely. My parents walked around like proud hosts, smiling, pretending we were all one big happy family. She even had the audacity to talk to Megan, who gave her the iciest look I've ever seen. Claire just laughed and moved on, like she'd read some self-help book about letting go of guilt and now considered herself healed. I avoided her, keeping to the edge of every group, sipping champagne just to have something in my hand. But I could feel her watching me. Every time I smiled at Daniel, every time someone congratulated me, I could sense her just out of sight, waiting. Then the DJ called for speeches. I froze, because we hadn't planned speeches. Daniel and I decided we wanted a low-key vibe, no toasts, no pressure. I turned to him in confusion, and he looked just as surprised. Then I saw Claire stand up. She was holding a folded piece of paper. I looked at my mom. She smiled. It hit me all at once. This wasn't a mistake. This was the plan. They gave her a mic. They gave her a moment. And in that moment, I realized the war I thought I'd left behind had just followed me to the altar. There's something uniquely horrifying about watching someone who's hurt you smile while a crowd politely applauds their performance, like everyone's forgotten the damage they caused and instead they're leaning in, waiting for the punchline, sipping their drinks while your insides begin to burn. When Claire stood up to give her speech, the room didn't go silent. It got brighter, lighter even, like she was some surprise guest star at a reunion episode, as if her mere presence wasn't a loaded weapon. I stood still near the cake table, a glass of champagne in my hand that I hadn't touched, because my throat had dried into sand the moment I saw her rise. She walked with that perfect, lazy grace she always had, not rushed, not awkward, not guilty, like she belonged in the center of every moment. Her dress shimmered slightly under the fairy lights, a little too close to white, and her heels clicked softly across the wooden floor like she knew the timing of every eye in the place. And God help me, they were all watching her, every single one of them, including Daniel. She took the mic and did this little self-effacing laugh, tucked a piece of hair behind her ear. She always did that when she was about to say something calculated and cruel, and started with a warm, sugary tone that made the pit in my stomach grow claws. "Well," she said, drawing out the word like a ribbon, I wasn't sure if I was going to say anything tonight. But when I saw my little sister looking so beautiful and so shockingly calm, I just had to speak. Laughter. Light chuckles. My mom smiled, and I swear I saw her mouth. She's trying. I remember when Emily was 5, Claire continued, and she married her teddy bear in the backyard, wearing one of Mom's tablecloths as a veil. She's always been a hopeless romantic. So it's no surprise we're all here again tonight. It started slow, like a spoon stirring honey. Then came the turn. And honestly, I think this might be what, engagement number 3? 4? She laughed. Hard to keep track these days. But I guess practice makes perfect, right? Something in me cracked. People laughed, not loudly, more of that awkward, uncomfortable laugh where you're not sure if it's okay, but you're too polite to sit in silence. Megan gave me a sharp look from across the room, like she was ready to leap over a table. Daniel put his arm around my back, but I could feel it stiffen, like maybe he didn't know that was a lie. One engagement. I had one failed engagement, Brian, the snake, and that was it. But Claire said it like it was a punchline to a joke they'd all been telling behind my back. But hey, she continued, holding the mic like it was part of her soul, Emily's never been afraid to put herself out there. Even during that little, well, we won't call it a breakdown, more of a spiritual retreat. Right, Em? She was referring to the 3 months I spent in therapy, trying to glue myself back together after finding her wrapped around Brian on my couch like I was the villain in the story. I could see a few faces in the crowd glance at me, like maybe now they had a better picture of who I really was. A few mouths shifted into slight, guilty smiles. Some of them probably thought Claire was being funny, or worse, bold. "And let's be honest," she said, voice softening in fake sincerity. "If anyone deserves happiness after everything, it's you, Emily." I mean that. I hope this one sticks. That was the moment. That exact sentence. I hope this one sticks. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said it, like she was wishing me luck at a coin toss. Like she wasn't the reason I even had to start over. My father clapped, like she had just delivered a Hallmark-worthy toast. Daniel looked down at me, his face hard to read. There was concern in his eyes, sure, but behind it, doubt, confusion. That dangerous seed of maybe there's something I don't know. My blood boiled. It was that kind of hot, violent rage that comes not from sudden pain, but from 6 years of swallowing it. Of being told to be the bigger person, to move on, to heal, when no one ever asked her to apologize. Claire handed the mic back like she hadn't just dropped a live grenade into the middle of my wedding. She sat down, smoothed her dress, and smiled directly at me. That smile. And I broke. I didn't break like a glass shattering all at once. I broke like a dam, slow but unstoppable, and then I was walking. I didn't think about it, I didn't check with Daniel, I didn't consult anyone, I just walked straight up to the front of the room. The DJ looked at me with surprise, even some hesitation, but I reached for the mic like I had been waiting for this moment since the day she first betrayed me. I could feel my heart slamming against my ribs, my palms slick on the microphone, my voice rising in my chest like something alive. Claire tilted her head at me, that smug look still frozen on her face like it belonged there. "Okay," I said, breath shaky but loud enough to cut through the room. "Let's talk about the truth." And just like that, the room went dead silent. There's a particular silence that settles over a room right before something unfixable happens, a kind of thick stillness that makes every chair feel heavier, every glance sharper, every breath measured like it's the last one you're going to take before the whole damn thing burns. That's what I stepped into when I grabbed that microphone and faced the crowd. The wedding crowd, full of aunts in glittering shawls, cousins who hadn't seen me in years, old college friends, Daniel's coworkers, my godmother who flew in from Oregon, and my parents frozen in their seats, caught between polite concern and growing dread. And then Claire, of course. Always Claire. She watched me like she was at the premiere of a movie she wrote herself. My fingers were cold around the mic, but my voice came out clearer than I expected, like my body had been waiting years to be handed the right stage, and finally, here it was, the altar where I could finally lay my truth down like a sacrificial offering. "You want speeches?" I said, my voice slicing through the air. "Let me give you one." The DJ, bless his awkward heart, moved instinctively to lower the music. The bartender stopped mid-pour. Daniel stood at the edge of the dance floor, his eyes locked on mine, unsure whether to stop me or back me up. Megan had already stood, her jaw set like she was ready to break someone's nose if I needed her to. I turned to Claire, who gave me that infuriating little shrug, the one she used to give teachers when she'd get caught cheating off my test in high school, like none of it really mattered, like it was all a game. So I started talking. Not yelling. Not crying. Just talking. Calm. Cold. Honest. Every word landed like a hammer. 6 years ago, I began, ignoring the math mistake I had made earlier in the day. Yes, I said 10, but hell, it felt like 10. I walked into my apartment and found my sister screwing my fiancé on my couch. That's not gossip. That's not exaggeration. That's not one of those family stories we all laugh about later. That's real. Gasps rippled through the crowd like wind through dry leaves. Someone near the back actually dropped a fork. I continued. I left that day and never looked back. I didn't make a scene, I didn't torch his clothes or post it online. I just left. I moved 2 states away and started over. And all that time, you know what Claire did? She didn't apologize. Not once. Instead, she spread stories, told people I was unstable, that I'd been struggling mentally, that Brian and I had already broken up. Lies. All of it. My mother stood up halfway, lips parted in horror. My father grabbed her wrist and gently pulled her back down. I wasn't finished. And here's the part nobody knows, the part even some of you might not believe. Claire got pregnant after I left. She told everyone it was Brian's. She guilt-tripped him into sticking around for a while, even though the relationship was already rotting from the inside. But when the baby was born, Brian had doubts. So he got a DNA test. I paused just long enough for people to lean in. Not his. Never was. That was the moment Claire's face twitched. Just a flicker, her jaw clenched, the corner of her mouth tightened. But I saw it. Her armor cracked. He didn't even find out until 6 months in, I said. He moved across the country after that. Cut ties with all of us. Can't say I blame him. I turned to face my parents. My voice softened, but the edge in it remained sharp enough to draw blood. And you knew. You both knew. You knew what she did. You knew what she said about me. And you still invited her here, today, to my wedding of the one damn day in my life I asked for peace. You smiled and clapped and gave her a microphone. I looked back to Daniel, whose expression had gone from concern to something deeper, not fear, not disappointment, but understanding. And that made the next part harder to say. I should have told you, I said to him, the words thick in my throat. I should have told you more. I was scared that if you saw where I came from, if you knew how broken this family really is, you'd leave. He didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, eyes steady, and took my hand in his like it had always belonged there. I'm not going anywhere, he said quietly. Let's go. And we could have. Right then. It would have been a perfect ending, a clean escape, a walk-off into a future free of the past. But something inside me wasn't done yet. Because Claire still sat there. Because my parents still looked stunned, as if they couldn't believe their golden daughter might actually have dirt under her nails. And because all those people in the room deserved to see how the story ended. So I turned back, the mic still in my hand, my dress trailing behind me like a battlefield flag. Wait, I said, loud and sharp enough to cut the silence again. One more thing, and that was when I truly let go of everything I'd been holding in. When I said, wait, one more thing, the whole damn room leaned in like they'd been waiting for this moment their whole lives, as if every guest in that barn sensed what was coming and had chosen not to blink, not even once, for fear of missing the final blow. My fingers gripped the microphone a little tighter, knuckles pale against the black metal, but my voice was steady now, not shaking, not searching, just anchored in a kind of painful clarity I hadn't felt in years. I turned to look directly at my parents, standing stiffly near the front, their faces suspended somewhere between horror and disbelief, like they still couldn't quite comprehend that the daughter they thought would stay quiet was the one now holding the match to everything they'd built on lies. Why? I asked, the word like a hammer. Why did you choose her? It landed like a stone tossed into still water, simple on the surface, but with ripples deep enough to drown them both. My mother's eyes darted across the room, scanning the crowd, her instincts always chasing appearances before honesty. My father swallowed hard, tugging at his cuff like he was preparing to deliver a closing argument in some courtroom only he believed existed. My mother spoke first, her voice wrapped in that awful maternal softness that always felt like pity more than love. Because we didn't want to lose both daughters. That sentence, that pitiful, cowardly little justification, was the final nail. Not because it was cruel, but because it was so nakedly selfish. They didn't protect me out of love or justice or even guilt. They just didn't want to look like parents who failed twice. They wanted to keep one daughter no matter what, even if it meant letting the other rot in silence. It was about control. About keeping things tidy. About not looking bad to neighbors and friends and family who were probably all told a watered-down version of the truth over brunches and church potlucks. I stared at them for a long moment, my dress heavy at my feet, the scent of roses and cake and white wine thick in the air, and I finally said the thing I think had been sitting on my tongue for 6 years. But you did, I said. Today, you lost me. Not just from this wedding. From everything. You'll never see me again. Not at Christmas. Not at birthdays. Not when you're sick or need someone to make arrangements. I'm done being the daughter you sacrifice for convenience. And I meant every single syllable of it. Gasps rippled through the room again, but quieter this time, like everyone sensed the severity of what had just been said, a finality to it that no apology would ever undo. My mother's face crumpled in slow motion, and for a brief, fractured second, I saw something almost human there, regret, maybe even sorrow. But it was too late. Far too late. You don't get to cry at the funeral of a relationship you buried yourself. And since I was on a roll, I figured there was one last card to play. A petty move? Sure, but it felt too perfect to pass up. Oh, I added, shifting the mic to my left hand so I could reach into the bodice of my dress. Yes, I had planned this part. Because healing is great, but vengeance wrapped in silk? That's goddamn poetry, and I pulled out a folded envelope. You might want to give this to Claire. I turned toward my sister, who looked pale now, her smug smile gone, her legs crossed tightly like she was bracing for a slap. It's the paperwork, I said. For the lake house. I sold my half. She blinked. To who? I smiled. The first real one all night. To your ex. You know, the one you dumped after he found out you'd been texting Brian again last year. Yeah, that guy. He was happy to take it off my hands. Said he's thinking about turning it into a hunting cabin. The silence after that was delicious. Like the air had just been vacuumed out of the barn, leaving everyone breathless and confused, not quite sure whether to laugh, applaud, or pray. Claire sat frozen, lips parted like she wanted to respond, but couldn't figure out which lie would land best. I didn't wait for a reply. I stepped off the small platform, still barefoot from earlier in the evening, the hem of my dress dragging behind me like a train of scorched history. Daniel met me halfway, his eyes lit not with fear or judgment, but admiration. He didn't say anything at first, just took my hand again like he was proud of me, like he'd never been more certain of what came next. Together, we walked down the barn aisle, not the one I was supposed to walk down earlier for the ceremony, but the one that now felt like something holier. A release. A resurrection. I passed the guests slowly, watching their stunned faces blur as I moved. Some smiled, some nodded, a few looked away. Nobody stopped me. Nobody dared. We stepped out into the spring night, the air cool against my skin, stars overhead like tiny promises I hadn't dared believe in before. Daniel opened the passenger door of the car, and I climbed in, still in the dress, still in the veil, still glowing with the aftermath of setting fire to everything that had kept me small. As he pulled onto the road, I let the window down. The wind caught my hair, tugged at the loose strands, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of guilt, shame, or second-guessing. I felt free. Not from the wedding. Not from the expectations. But from them. From all of them. And I didn't cry. I was done crying. I leaned back in the seat, closed my eyes, and let the quiet settle around me like armor. I didn't just walk out of a wedding. I walked out of a war. And for once, I didn't lose.